Let's check about the agglomeration. This is the concentration of firms and people in cities provide the economic benefits as well as other benefits. So the agglomeration in Tanzania, for example, in cities which is stated before, it's experiencing high pace. Let's look about the impact of agglomeration in Tanzania, starting with the positive one. One is the availability of job. That's why many young people, they are moving from rural areas to urban areas searching for employment. Also, improve of lives. As we see in many towns, improvement of life is easier compared to rural areas. For example, infrastructures. That's why many people, they prefer to go to town areas. So agglomeration in town areas, influencing is coming with the economic benefits, which people, they prefer to go to. Another one is private sector's development. Yeah, growing of town, growing of cities, it brings the private sectors development. For example, formal sectors. Nowadays, in many towns, as stated before, for example, in Dar es Salaam, Dodoma, Arusha, Mbeya, Mwanza, there's a lot of startup. A lot of businesses are formed, and this business provide employment, provide better life. Also, this is create the private sectors for people to own properties, wealthy, and the property rights. Also, this agglomeration, it comes with the impact in a negative way. For example, number one is high cost and low productivity. Living in these cities, it's quite expensive compared to rural areas or areas which before it termed as rural areas. For example, in Dar es Salaam, to live in Dar es Salaam, you need to have sustainable income. But also here in high cost living, there is a low productivity. Why? For example, let's look about these major cities, Dar es Salaam, Mwanza, Arusha, and Dodoma. The big problem for low productivity, many people, they waste a lot of time. For example, in Dar es Salaam, people waste around 170 minutes for commuting from work to their living areas, their residence. Also in Arusha, people waste around 120 minutes on commuting. Mwanza, the same case, people waste almost 180 to 200 minutes commuting from work to their residence areas. In Dodoma, at least there some improvement, but still people, they lose almost 60 minutes to 70 minutes from commuting. So this brings about low productivity, and due to disconnection, congestion of the road, and so on. Another negative impact of agglomeration is the informal sector development. For example, development of squatters, disconnected areas. Also, when it comes to businesses, this growing of agglomeration, it brings for many informal sectors developing. In Tanzania, commonly known as the machinga. And nowadays, there are other people, they call as a winger. So this development is due to agglomeration. When many young people, they are moved from the rural areas to urban areas without no skills and the intended knowledge to operate or to work in the private sector, they end up in informal sectors. And ending in these informal sectors is not to bring benefit to government, because most of these informal sectors, they don't pay tax. Once they don't pay tax, what it bring out, like major town and the cities, there have a lot of people who they're not contributing to the government. And if they're not contributing to government is failed to build the roads. It failed to have a good infrastructure. And all of this together, it brings to impact of infrastructure deficit. For example, many towns here, they have a poor and a low standard infrastructure. Exceptional here are a few towns. For example, Dodoma, which government invested a lot in infrastructure development. But when you take major cities such as Dar es Salaam, Mwanza, or Arusha, many areas outside of CBDs, there's poor roads, poor infrastructure, and this brings to economic deficit too. And the fourth is the limited integration. Yeah, growing of these cities and a large population of people together led to lack of connectivity. Also, poor planning. Here we are talking about town planning and zoning. Major cities in Tanzania, it faces this problem. For example, exceptional here is only Dodoma and some such a few areas in big cities. When we talk about Dar es Salaam, for example, the entire city, the only CBD, it have a clear zoning system. But when you go almost 50 kilometers from the city center, many areas, it has a poor planning. Also, government deficiency. Here, government, it failed to operate due to the limited integration. For example, major areas in Mwanza, Arusha, Mbeya, Tanga, and the other cities I stated before, it had this government deficiency on working due to overcrowding of people. So the cities absorb a lot of young people, a lot of energetic people to the cities, but those people, due to living in different areas where zoning is poor, integration is poor, all of them lead to government's deficiency to provide services. So let's look about the policy and the future outlook for all of these cities. So to turn urbanization and agglomeration into a driver of economic growth in Tanzania, stakeholders such as government, private sectors, and the people should look about this. One is the planning and management. The government and the private sectors should cooperate together to have a clear planning and management of land. For example, zoning system in major cities should be very well accommodated, for example, to state areas used for residents, also to have areas used for infrastructure, also areas for business matters, areas for industrials, and so on. Another one is the secondary city focus. These major cities should also focus to develop in the secondary city in order to absorb the heat and large population in those cities. For example, Dar es Salaam has now, it has the secondary city, which is the Kibaha, which is municipal, announced the last year, 2025, with the President Samia Suluhu. In this, it will lead to absorb some of people who they cannot afford to live in large cities. Also, in the following growth poles, for example, Arusha, the secondary city is Moshi. When we talk about Mwanza, also there is a secondary city such as Musoma or Bukoba, Kahama, Shinyanga. All of them act as a secondary cities. Also, when we talk about Dodoma, there's a Singida, and now there's a small town which in near future also will be the secondary city, which is called Kibaigwa. Also, when we talk about Mbeya, there's a town such as Iringa. Also, there's Mafinga, Njombe. All of them, it act as a secondary city. Another here in policy in the future outlook, improve of service and the infrastructure, such as water, sanitation, roads, airports, and all amenities which it will be sustainable for growing of the cities. And this together, it will lead to Tanzania to have a future outlook in economic perspectives. Conclusion, Tanzania is growing. As now expected Tanzania to be one of the top leading in Africa for having large economic growth. Here we can have a group such as Ethiopia, Cote d'Ivoire, Tanzania, Kenya, Angola. All of them are leading the pace to have a large economic to join the #1 group, which we are talking about South Africa, Egypt, also Morocco, Algeria. So all of this together, once government improve the infrastructure and people together working to this urbanization, it will bring a lot of opportunities in Tanzania. Thank you.